Welcome to EyE on You.
Today we are very honored to have Mr. Bernard Chen with us. Bernard is the convener of the Executive Council. When preparing for the interview, I was trying to count the number of public offices he holds. But when I looked up his CV, I found that there are just too many titles to count. What's even more amazing is that his scope of work is so broad, ranging from conservation, cultural development, education, judicial employment, social services, to even food and health.
Yes, Bernard truly is a well-rounded person in all aspects. Under the Basic Law, the Executive Council is an organ assisting the CE in policy making. Except for the appointment, removal and disciplining of officials, and the adoption of measures in emergencies, the CE shall consult the Executive Council before making important policy decisions, introducing bills to the ExCo, making subordinate legislation, or dissolving the ExCo. You may want to know what are the responsibilities of the non-official convener of the ExCo and how does he comment on the overall political and economic development of Hong Kong. Without further ado, let's welcome Mr. Chen to join us. Hello, Bernard.
Hi, Eunice.
Thank you. Welcome to our show.
Welcome to our show.
Thank you. Thanks for having me here.
The Executive Council is presided over by the CE, and there are 16 principal officials and there are 16 non-official members. So can you tell us, is there any tradition or rules or procedures in the ExCo, and what is your role as a convener in the ExCo?
Well, I have to say Executive Council is not an easy thing for people to understand because it has obviously a history. I mean, Executive Council has been around under even the colonial days. But soon after the return of Hong Kong to the mainland, we start off with the Executive Council. First, you have the official members. The official members of the Executive Councils are the secretaries themselves. And then you have another 16 non-official members. So I am one of the 16 non-official members. And the title, the convener, I suppose I am the senior member among
Correct,
the
yes.
non-official members. Because under the colonial times, they were members and senior members. So I think my role is more like that. Now I think one thing most people got confused, because when they hear my title as convener, it gives the impression that I'm the one who chaired the meeting. And of course not. First of all, I'm the convener of the non-official only, not the official members. In addition to official and non-official, there is the president of the Executive Council, and that is the chief executive herself. But that title is not often used because she's the chief executive, so nobody will refer her as the president of the Executive Council. So we are more or less like the external advisors to the chief executive. We take part in all the proceedings, all the major decisions, as well as legislation. So before the legislation being introduced to the Legislative Council, we would have to get the endorsement from the Executive Council. Again, this is another area of confusion. We don't actually vote on the issue, not us. The decision is only actually made by one person, and that is the chief executive himself or herself. But she or he must take into our comments at the Executive Council before that decision is deliberated. So there's no voting. But I mean, I've been a member of the Executive Council for quite some time now. I have served actually all 4 chief executives in the past, and never I came across a situation where there is a unanimous view against something and then the chief executive still push on. That's never, at least not in my recollection, that ever happened. So the chief executive do listen to the view of members, even though that we are technically just advisors. And the current term, you're right that we have 16 non-official members. They came from different walks of life, and about half of them have affiliation to political parties, so-called the pro-establishment political parties. This arrangement only started from the last term to this term. I suppose there's some sort of a connectivity between the ExCo and ExCo, because in a way, then ExCo have a better sense of how likely these proposed legislation or law will be received in ExCo. So collectively, we provide these advice to the chief executive. Now, of course, we are bound by a lot of rules. Confidentiality is definitely one. We're not supposed to discuss at the ExCo level. But there is one confusion that most people tends to get it wrong, and that is how involved are we with every bit of government proceedings and work? Now, we are not full-time, we are part-time, right? And we take part in the decision, those decisions that have been presented to us. But not every decisions are presented in ExCo. For example, the most heated debate lately in the last couple of weeks is always about quarantine, hotel quarantine, which country is group A, group B, group C. And of course, we are not involved in this day-to-day type of decision. So we are not bound by that. So, we are free to criticize as well some of the decision being made. But the problem is the public can't understand that, right? In the eyes of the public, they see we are part of the government. So whenever we criticize or when we have a different view from the government, then they'll say, wait, aren't you guys agree on that? Why are you speak differently? That's the part when I think the public tends to misunderstand because they don't understand the role of ExCo. Everything that comes through us would need to consult us before the final decisions are made on certain things, especially legislation. But there are other day-to-day operation, the government, we're not involved.
So aside from the ExCo, I believe that many of our audiences are very curious about one thing, that is your time management skill. Apart from the various public offices that you hold, you have to manage your family business as well. So how do you allocate your time to tackle such various roles at the same time?
Funny you mentioned this. A lot of my friends, they thought I only work 100% for the government. You're absolutely correct. I still have to manage my own business and other things. And also I do have other public services commitment, such as Hong Kong Council of Social Service and so on. That is a tough question. I get up very early in the morning. I think maybe I'm maximizing my day. I typically get up around before 6. So because I do my workout in the morning and then I have meetings all day.
So how many hours of sleep do you get every night?
Ooh. I have a software that I use, and I set a time, 6 hours.
Oh, okay.
And but
that's not enough.
Not too bad. Not too bad.
Well, that's the problem. That's not enough. But so far I don't get 6 hours. So I think I might get maybe maximum 1 day, 2 days in a week that I get 6 hours.
All right.
So I typically get below 6. I think around 5 something.
But usually no day off, right? Work through the week.
No, Saturday, Sunday, it's the same. I get up around the same time also on Saturday and Sunday. Yeah.
So talking back to the ExCo, it's under the impression that only the pro-establishment camp people were invited into the ExCo. Is this the case, or do you think we should invite more of the other opposition to the ExCo? We
have half the members, so-called the pro-establishment politicians, but you also still have, another 8 of them that. Oh yes, they are perhaps more pro-government, but certainly they are also representing different walks of life as well. So, and they equally can criticize government. I don't think everybody told the party line. Especially if you look at the quarantine or this COVID thing, right? Everybody has an issue with how government are doing. So everyone criticize, but at least we all have one common objective is how to improve the running of Hong Kong, right? Improve the governance and so on and so on. So none of them has ill intention. So the question is, what is the definition of pro-establishment? It doesn't mean that we are not yes men. Everyone's are free to voice out their objections, and better is to voice out alternatives. I mean, it's so easy to say no, but do you have alternatives? Do you have better suggestions? I think so. It's a healthy debate, but I cannot imagine that ExCo invite people with only one intention is to say no on everything, and with the intention to stall any running of the government. I mean, why would we invite them? No government in the world will invite a so-called opposition into your cabinet. Especially if their intention is to disrupt you. So I think that's not what we want. But then equally, it's not the same as like, everyone just toe party line and say yes to everything. No, don't think so. I think in my experiences in all these years, I think many of them have a lot of issue, but everyone wants to do this just for the improvement of the running of the city.
Correct.
Right. So let's talk about the economy. While the epidemic is under control and the economy is improving, there is a 7.8% growth in GDP in the first half of the year, and unemployment rate has fallen to about 5%. So what is your outlook on the economy of Hong Kong in the second half of 2021, and does the government have any further measures to help those industries that are affected by the epidemic?
Well, unfortunately, I think the road ahead is still going to be very challenging. But I have to say that the worst has to be over. I mean, if we put ourselves in the situation like last year at this time, we have no idea how this pandemic's going. We don't have the vaccine yet. Well, in the early months, we don't even have enough PPE. So we're in crisis. Right. So that's why the government have to came out with all these employment subsidy scheme, everything to try to stabilize. I think that worst is over. The question is, how long will we see the economy back to normality? I'm afraid that it's still going to be months, if not a year away. I think we need to drive the vaccination up. Obviously, we have much improved now, but we are far from reaching the right optimal number. I was told by the scientists that early on, someone suggested herd immunity of 70-80%. But then the latest thing now, because of the Delta variant and so on, apparently 70-80% is not enough. Pretty much you need to get to 100.
Yeah.
So until we reach there, right? The border restriction would not be relaxed and traveling would not resume to complete normality. So we're still months and months away. Although, as I said, certain industry is largely spare and they're okay. Like financial industry actually is actually quite okay. But can you imagine you are in hospitality? Right. It's still not good. Aviation, basically, So those, it will still be some time before. So I think the key message is still everyone get vaccinated. Seems like that is the only way out for not just Hong Kong, for the whole world to return to some form of normality.
Yeah. So recently, the national delegation introduced the 14th five-year plan, opportunities for Hong Kong, and more favorable policies are in the pipeline to benefit Hong Kong and its residents. With the stronger national support, we will gain more opportunities and achieve greater development in financial services, digital transformation, trade, innovation and technology, and green development. So how should these new policies be implemented in Hong Kong and get the general public to seize the opportunity?
Yeah, I think first of all, we should be very thankful that given especially now in the economic crisis and pandemic, who can we rely on, right? So and clearly, central government and Chinese market is a lifeline. Can you imagine? So I think being part of that, inner circular movement is so important because, I think that is the biggest market for Hong Kong. So the question now is, how do we access that market? Because not everybody understands the market, and even if you understand the needs of that market, how do I get access to it? So I think that there are still a lot of gaps. So I think the most recent visit from officials from Beijing came and explained. I think it's a good message, but to a lot of Hong Kong people, this is still very new, right? So you don't understand what that all meant, right? So I think you just have to keep explaining, right? But explaining is one thing, but then I think the next challenge is, well, even if I agree that's where I think the potentials are, how do I get there? Yeah. I think that's the next challenge. Honestly, there is no answer. I mean, even like me as a company, as a corporate, I also need to find out too. I mean, Chinese government, Beijing, gave us the green light, to include us in that 5 years plan. It did not guarantee you success. It will still be up to Hong Kong people, Hong Kong company, to take advantage. But it's not like, we give you a formula to success. No, you got to work on it, got to fight for it, and so on. So that journey, we're all going to need to walk together, Hong Kong people, young people, company, we're all going to need to work. But at least there's that hope. You know, can you imagine in some of the other markets in Europe and elsewhere, like so much more uncertainty?
At least we have the hope.
Yes.
Right, so recently the term renminbi has undoubtedly become a keyword for Hong Kong's financial developments to a new level. So in your opinion, how should Hong Kong further strengthen the local financial system so that we can better serve as an offshore renminbi hub, global renminbi asset management center, value-added center, and risk management center?
Well, I can't claim to be an expert on this. What I do know, though, however, is the role of Hong Kong.
Right.
You know, especially in the last many years, people continue to question Hong Kong's future, right? Are we still serving China's need? No, China is a huge country. China has different needs. Mm-hmm. Hong Kong's role, Hong Kong's future, definitely is the offshore part of that formula. So because of that one country, two system, because of the free flow of capital and so on, so we are in the best position to serve China for the offshore needs. So renminbi internationalization, offshore renminbi, that's our strength. Mm-hmm. So we should capitalize on that and work together with the onshore market.
So recently there is a new law in China. It was enacted for the foreign investment law. And then how do you see there is opportunity for foreign investors to mainland, and how does the Hong Kong enterprise enter to the mainland market?
I'll tell you for sure, I think from many of the international chambers in Hong Kong, mm-hmm. foreign companies are still very excited to tap to this market because there's still a market growing. So they all want to come out here, especially GBA, mm-hmm. Greater Bay Area, right? That in fact, honestly, quite a number of international chambers told me the one reason why they still consider Hong Kong, they could be anywhere, right? Mm-hmm. But they chose Hong Kong because the proximity to the GBA, to tap to that market. And that's why Hong Kong role is too, right? Yeah. Again, I mentioned formula. There's no formula today, but we have to create that formula. Mm-hmm. So how can Hong Kong help GBA market to tap into capital, international capital? How is international company using Hong Kong platform to enter the GBA and the rest of China? Mm-hmm. So I think there's a lot of opportunities. And that's just the financial part. There are other stuff too about ASEAN culture. Obviously in the 5 years plan, Hong Kong's designated as the bridge for Chinese art and foreign arts.
So the Belt and Road Initiative is a long-term strategy for the external development at a national level. So in your opinion, how should Hong Kong capitalize on its distinctive advantage to cope with the national progress?
Well, thank you for asking that question. You invite the right person to answer that question because my family have a long route in Thailand and other ASEAN market. And I have to say, I was the only person pushing the ASEAN agenda in government all this year. The government didn't pay much attention to me. Why? Because, mainland China is a much bigger market. So ASEAN is kind of not as important. So why is it changed today? Now, Hong Kong government is very keen now to develop ASEAN market because it's the second largest market. The reason is not that because Hong Kong just realized that ASEAN is important. No. The real reason is because China see ASEAN as a very important market. Mm-hmm. And Chinese companies are using Hong Kong to go to ASEAN market. Mm-hmm. That's why Hong Kong government is very keen to also establish even closer bilateral arrangement with ASEAN countries. We are that conduit because Hong Kong companies have long history in doing businesses in ASEAN and vice versa. A lot of ASEAN companies do have operation or representative office in Hong Kong. So we are the perfect connector for Chinese company coming through Hong Kong, going to these ASEAN countries and vice versa. I'm also trying to sell to ASEAN that they should come to Hong Kong to enter the GBA. Right. So for example, like the country like Thailand, I know very well. You're not just going to Thailand. You go into the hinterland of Thailand. There's Cambodia, Laos, and Myanmar, and so on. Mm-hmm. Similarly, Hong Kong is that so-called bridge to GPA. So I think ASEAN, Hong Kong have so much in common together with China. So that is the story now. And regional cooperation is very important now.
And I know that you had some student scheme to invite students to go to your Thailand
Yes.
hotels and cooperate to work in the Belt and Road initiative. So how can the government encourage youth to see more from the Belt and Road initiative?
Well, I have to say that I'm also very grateful to the Maritime Society
Right.
for helping us out and connecting us. I think that's the thing is, early on we talk about the future, and sometimes we can't blame the students for being lost because they don't understand, right? Yes, they probably hear about GPA, they hear about Bell and Roll, but how is a problem, right? So I think providing these sort of internship, job experiences, travel is the first step for them to understand what you're talking about. I think the key to any success is to have the first-hand experience and walking that journey. I think that's what's missing. And I think Hong Kong's youth needs to look beyond just Hong Kong. They need to understand what GPA is about. Equally, they need to understand what ASEAN, Belt and Roll. I understand that more and more corporations are now signing up to this type of internship, Maritime Society, to others, NGOs. It's also good for them.
So the government should encourage the
I think
corporate to
so.
do so.
Even better if government can come up with some sort of matching grants or give a little bit of financial assistance, it will be even better.
So thank you so much for your time. It has
Thank you.
been a very inspiring conversation.
Thank you.
And I've
Thank you
learned a
very
lot
much.
from you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Bernard.